started right now. So my name is Stefan Mueller. The overall goal of the LandViewer platform, for those of you who don't know, is to provide basically visibility to the crop and ethanol supply chain. We do this by heavily relying on advanced technologies such as satellite imagery, infrared sensing technologies, and we pair this with other available information sources. In this webinar, I want to first look at, let me switch the slides here. In this webinar, I want to first look a little bit about the products we offer this year, the new products we offer this year, followed by an introduction into the LandViewer model, how the statistics work. And then finally, we're going to provide a little bit of an overview of the 2014 season as it is in progress. If you have any questions, on the top, on the right-hand side, you can you see the field, the question field, type them in there, and we will answer all questions at the end of the webinar. So with that, I want to go into, again, first into the new products that we offer here at Genscape to inform the visibility of the ethanol supply chain. What a product that we have developed basically assesses the operation of individual ethanol plants a day ahead by looking at the natural gas nominations, again, made a day ahead. So participating plants can see how other ethanol plants are doing, whether they're operating, whether they're down for the day, etc. Again, gain visibility into this part of the production. With this product, you have the capability to chart the characteristics for about 70 plants are currently in the database to see, again, the natural gas use operating characteristics. You can select different time horizons over which you want to chart the historical operating characteristics, and you can select certain plants that you want to track each day. Another product that we're offering is currently in test trials as well, and that uses infrared technology to look at ethanol storage currently at New York Harbor, and then in the future we anticipate we will also add Argo. So we are flying on a weekly basis. We're flying over these tanks and take infrared image, and in a well-calibrated procedure, we calculate how much ethanol is stored. So again, here we want to gain visibility into the storage of ethanol. For example, what that will help ethanol producers is if storage levels are low, right? One would expect that oil companies at some point will bid up ethanol, potentially pay a little bit more for ethanol over the coming week, and help anticipate ethanol producers how to react to that. So those are the new products. Again, they're currently in test trial, but over the next 4 weeks or so, we're fully expecting to offer those products on a wider spread basis. I want to go now into our LandViewer platform. For those of you who participated last year, you will know sort of the general data points we are watching out for. But I will explain it here in a little bit more detail for new and prospective clients. Obviously, the goal of this platform, LandViewer yield and acreage platform, is twofold, right? We want to provide a higher geographic resolution, basically give people a county-by-county assessment that USDA is not doing throughout the growing season. We provide high accuracy of our predictions, and we also want to front-run with our predictions the USDA, the key USDA reports released throughout the season. Using our satellite technology, and Ken Copenhaver, our satellite expert, will talk in more detail about that. We will provide an acreage report prior to the USDA planted acres release on June 30. We'll provide this to our clients, and then we will start our yield prediction model that this year we will update every 2 weeks. And Jonathan Fleck, our statistician, will talk about the methodology, the statistics behind that yield model in more detail. Concurrently, we have already started our on-the-ground assessment, and Randy Dar, our fourth cooperator here, he coordinates our on-the-ground efforts, our scouting efforts, and he will provide later on some detail on his efforts. So going back to this timeline slide here, the two key reports that we're going to be front-running is the June 30 USDA planted acres report, and then we're heavily watching the USDA crop production forecast when USDA, on a state-by-state basis, provides yield forecasts. At this point, obviously, we will already be able to provide county-by-county yield forecast. We plan to update this product every 2 weeks starting June 30, and to clients that are currently signed on, we're already providing our weekly on-the-ground newsletter that informs the current state of crop progress. In our efforts, we are relying heavily on high-resolution satellite imagery. This is a 5-meter near-infrared rabbit eye image that basically shows you corn emerging out of the ground. You can even see in darker green earlier planted corn. Corn you can see in purple, non-corn, and in the picture on the lower right, especially you can see a lot of drowned out fields as well. As, a lot of areas were affected by strong rains last year. If you combine then our yield and acreage estimates with on our website with other information tools that we offer there, including basis pricing and corn spot pricing, you can basically make an informed decision on where a lot of corn is going in, relative to the current spot prices of corn, where corn is cheap if you need to go out and buy additional corn, or if you have to hold on to your corn because the supply situation in surrounding areas is tighter. So access to our website you get also, and we have 7,000 elevator prices posted on that website. Here's a screenshot of our website. It's pretty slick. It's like a dual viewer technology. You can select different weather products, and again, the basis and spot prices for corn. As the season progresses, we'll host many more weather products. June 1, we start posting the NDVI, Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, that's indicative of crop progress, and precipitation is posted right now. Night and daytime temperature we'll be posting, and then yield and acreage information on a county-by-county basis. And again, with this dual viewer capability, you have the capability to basically get different views going, and identify particular regions of interest for your business. The link to the website is landviewer.genscape.com. Feel free to go online and sign up. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ken Copenhaver, who will introduce the model, talk a little bit about the background of our satellite data, which is still the backbone of our data capabilities and sort of the key differentiator of our services, and then followed by Jonathan Fleck, who will go get a little bit more in detail on the model. Ken, are you there?
Yeah, Stefan. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely, yes.
Great. So for 2014, one of the things that we did is we expanded our model to include historically a 10-year database, which greatly increases the number of variables and conditions that we can introduce into the model. We've maintained the information as far as the weather data goes, the vegetation vigor maps from the NASA satellites, but we've also added, and Jonathan may expand on this as well, we've added the ability to break it out by agro-ecozones, which are an expression of soil type and climate. So rather than just try to break something out by a county or a state, we're actually combining areas that have very similar climate, very similar soils. We've added leaf area index from satellite, which is often associated with soybean yields, and that uses multiple bands from the satellite. It's been carefully calibrated by NASA to reflect how much active leaf area there is for a crop. Similar to that, we have the fraction of photosynthetic activity ratio, FPAR, that's also been developed by NASA scientists, but we've taken that. One of the things that we offer is that our product is generated daily. If there's a clear day in your area, we've grabbed the satellite data for your area and we've created a new product. Typically, if you're getting something that's been developed by NASA, it's a conglomeration of 8 different days or 16 different days, but we update for each area daily as long as there's not cloud cover. I'm going to turn it over here to Jonathan to get into the details of the 2014 model. Stefan, if you want to move on to the next slide.
Yes.
Thanks, Ken. Can you hear me okay, Stefan?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, perfect. So as Ken alluded to, in 2014, we do have more regression variables that are available to us. Many of those over in the left-hand column we were using last year, so some very classic ones, precipitation and soil moisture certainly. We also take year-to-date measurements into account. We also square some of the variables just in case there's too much precipitation. Then we can kind of take that into account with the precipitation squared. The right column of variables, a lot of these are more satellite oriented. So again, one of our differentiators in how we can gather data. And as Ken mentioned, the very quick turnaround time from when NASA can do the measurements until we can have it on the website and available for your consumption. But NDVIs will be taking measurements at least every 8 days for our biweekly forecast. And so these regression variables, these just go into the 7 public forecasts that we'll be making every 2 weeks. There's actually other measurements that get gathered and are baked into some of these variables. And then each ag zone, and in some case each state, will use anywhere from 15 to 25 of these variables in a regression equation that is calibrated just to that state or just to that ag zone for the last 10 years. And then just to be clear, what we're forecasting is yield. We get our harvest acres. That too comes from the satellites. We're able to measure that fairly accurately with the satellites, and so we've decided that that's going to be the approach there. As we start the year, the acres will be driven more by historical averages, but then very quickly we'll settle into using the satellite measurements for our acreage. But the regression component is only forecasting yield. Sometimes folks have questions about that, but it is the yield and the acres together that ultimately give us the bushels. So, next slide. So we originally developed the regression equations in Minitab, and then for ease of use, we poured everything over to Microsoft Excel, which is certainly fine for running tens of thousands of rows and being able to quickly and easily update the regression coefficient. So this is just a teeny tiny snapshot. The reason one county is listed 7 times is that this is showing 7 years of data for this particular county in Texas. The white cells, soil fertility, average degree days, which would be growing degree days, year-to-date precipitation squared. Those would all be known at the end of May, so that is actual data. The September 15th column, the orange column, that's going to be a forecasted column, and basically what we'll do is we'll take the growing degree days on June 15th, and then for that county, we will add how growing degree days has changed over the coming 90 days from June 15th to September 15th. We'll take that average change for that particular county, and we'll add it to our empirical data. So then we have a forecast for, okay, where is growing degrees probably going to finish the season. So if we start strong, we'll probably finish strong, and maybe even too strong. If we start lower, we will probably finish lower. But and this is a, this is an evolution from last year where we did not as actively forecast those future variables in those future months. But now we have it calibrated to each county's 10-year history. For each of those 49 variables, we use that particular average. In the next slide, you can see some of the results we're getting. So for the last 10 years, we're showing 3 screenshots, or 3 intervals. So we're showing first week of July, first week of August, and first week of September. And you can see this is national bushels. And over the last 6 years, in particular, 2008 to 2013, the model does trace reality extremely closely, and we would expect to be north of 95% accurate on national bushels at each of those points in time. In atypical years like 2012, drought year, it may take a little bit longer to realize exactly what's happening and to quantify it. But we're going to continue to try and chase that down and make sure that we can account for outliers and make sure that everyone can do their risk analysis in a meaningful way in terms of understanding how much does this drought impact us, how much does this above average rainfall impact us. But we'll continue to look at those outlier scenarios and make sure that the model is responsive to everyone's needs.
So at this point, I want to talk a little bit about the current season. First of all, thank you, Jonathan. At this point, I want to talk a little bit about the 2014 crop season. I want to split it between Ken doing a bit of introduction, what we're seeing out there, and then handing it over to Randy, who has assembled a large team of crop consultants. Ken, do you want to summarize a little bit?
Sure. So what we've done is taken the information that the ground team has provided, the group of crop consultants that Randy's going to talk about, with the satellite data, with the weather data that we're seeing to kind of come up with where we're currently at with the 2014 growing season. And really, what we've seen is there's 2 different corn belts right now. The eastern corn belt seems to have a pretty good planting record. They've had some good warm temperatures to warm up the soil, and whereas especially the northwestern corn belt has seen a lot of cool, wetter days that haven't allowed as many people to get out into the field. And then one thing that we've seen looking at the soil moisture information is that despite these recent spring rains, we're still operating at a deficit when we compare our current soil moisture in the Corn Belt to what we've seen over the past 5 years as an average. So, Stefan, maybe go to the next slide. So what we've done here, and Jonathan, feel free to jump in if I don't explain this properly, but we've taken the USDA numbers that they've come out with in the WSDA report, where they've predicted the number of acres and potential yields. And we've tried to project, based on that information and the yield trend in different areas, and the average harvested acres, the harvested versus planted acres trend in those areas, to try to predict where we'd be right now if we were to project yield and production and acreage. And this first slide is looking at predicted yield. Not a surprise that the garden spots are Illinois and Iowa, again, when we're talking about a yield trend. But certainly these yields are pretty high when you look at all those greens, and those greens representing anywhere from the mid-160s to greater than 200. In order to meet these these predicted production numbers, we're going to have to get some really high yields from those typically high-yielding areas. So next slide, please. And here we've extrapolated into production based on the harvested acres and yield. And again, red representing high production acres. We see very similar where Illinois and Iowa are going to have to get some very high production numbers. We will, as we've always done, be clipping out the draw areas for our clients and getting them the specific information for their draw areas for these maps. And maybe go on to the next slide, Stephan. So here again, we're just looking at harvested acres, and harvested acres is based on what typically was the planted acreage versus the harvested acreage for these counties, where these counties are extrapolated from the planted acres by state that the USDA has put out, and seeing very similar. The usual counties are the ones that are they're harvesting a large amount of corn. And then the next slide, please. So then this slide kind of looking at what we did in 2013 and what some of the counties were producing and what they'll have to produce in 2014. Obviously, these Iowa counties that produce lower than expected, which is something that we were predicting a lot of last year, are going to have to come in higher. Illinois, having done well last year, is probably not going to have to produce that much better than this year. And of course, the Dakotas that did quite well, Nebraska, may not have to do as well as it's done last year. But this is what we're going to need to get to these production numbers that USDA is forecasting from these different areas of the country. So maybe go on to the next slide here. And at this point, I'm going to let Randy Darr take over and introduce himself and talk a little bit about our ground truthing efforts for 2014.
All right, thanks, Ken. Yeah, I'm Randy Darr. I own and operate Soil Right Consulting Services Incorporated down in the St. Louis metro area. We work on in upwards of 80,000 acres scattered out in some 35 counties in 3 states. Been at this for 28 years, and my company essentially specializes in soil and plant health issues, and we help our clients grow profitable crops with hopefully controlling expenses and all of that. I also I had my bachelor's degree in ag education from Western Illinois University, and I also have an MBA from Missouri Baptist University, bachelor's at Western Illinois, and my MBA at Missouri Baptist University. Sorry, I'm having a brain freeze there. Anyway, I've been doing this with LandViewer for 3 years now, and we have kind of developed this further each year. And this year I've included 11 of my colleagues around the country, and I tried to strategically put them in places where we can get a very good snapshot of what the ground looks like in these different areas of the country. So I've assembled this group, and they're really excited to give us information throughout the growing season, and we will see how this information compares to what Ken gets from the air. Currently, it looks like the corn crop is very close to being planted, and with areas of northeast Iowa and central Minnesota being far behind. Staying cool and cold across the Corn Belt slows the crop development. We've had some, as probably you all know, some very chilly weather. Parts of Minnesota and northeast Iowa's really had some bad times. We've had some excess water. The last week has been fairly wet over the Corn Belt, and we are just needing some warm weather. The crop does look good. It has emerged. What has been planted, like I said, there's some finishing up to do, but it looks very good considering the semi-unfavorable conditions. At this time, we're not really concerned about nitrogen losses. We haven't had excess rains to the levels that would cause nitrogen to lose or denitrify or just leave the ground as it does. And we just mainly need some warmer weather and some timely rains later on, and I think we're well on our way. So is there another slide there for me?
Randy, maybe you can just mention why we have those circles that cooperate. You put a team together of cooperators, and just mention a little bit about the Brookside Lab, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah, these colleagues that I have put together, the circles here, is pretty much their territories. I tried to pick colleagues that are around that cover a fairly wide geographic area, and each of these guys do cover a wide swath in their business territory. Most of these guys, not all of them, there's a couple that aren't, but most of us are affiliated with Brookside Laboratories in New Bremen, Ohio, and it is the laboratory that we utilize and belong to as an organization. Brookside is the only laboratory of its kind in that only people associated with them can use them. And that sets up a unique system that ensures that we are totally focused on the benefit of our client.
Right. And the lab in general evaluates soil samples, right?
Correct, yes. But virtually anything they get, you can get into a test tube, we can test it for something. They are also one of only 3 laboratories currently that can do the soil health test, which is a very new test that actually measures the biological life of a soil, and this is going to be a very valuable piece of information as we go further as far as environmental protection and nutrient management issues.
Yeah, excellent. So the next slide, Randy, what do we see here? Or corn emergence as of May week 2, right?
Right, yes. This is corn emergence or planting. The crop that's there looks good, or it's, very, well, the ones with very low to low, that means it hasn't emerged quite yet. Where you see the good circles, that means that the crop looks good and is up. The percentages, the ones that sent in the percentages, you would say that, like the one in the middle of Illinois there, saying that the crop is 50 to 70% emerged. So at that point in time. So really the most concerning areas would be that Minnesota and northeast Iowa section, maybe northwest Iowa, but it's been extremely cold up there, so it's going to be difficult for a while until it warms up for the corn crop to get going.
Yeah. I just want to mention, obviously, that once we see solid crop emergence across the Midwest, which will probably be around the first week of June, we will post the satellite vegetation index on our website and get that procedure going. So Randy, what do we see on this slide now?
Yeah, and then each of our cooperators have been sending in a written report of what they're seeing in the field, and here you can see the what our kind of report was this past week, and lots of areas got more rain than it rained all week last week around most of the Corn Belt, so each report is very similar in nature. So you can be able to watch those reports, and there will be pictures along with them, and you'll be able to see visually as the crop year goes of how the corn crop looks like.
Excellent. Thank you. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Ken Copenhaver, who will finish out a current crop progress based on his mapping capabilities. Ken?
Thanks, Stefan, and thanks, Randy. very informative. One of the things that we're trying to do this year, and I think we did it for last year too, is provide the clients with information that kind of extends beyond the usual land viewer data set when we find something that we think helps them better understand what the crop is looking like in their area. And I know last year there were a lot of questions about prevented acres, where they were, how much they were, and one of the things that we did is go out and get the USDA, FSA prevented acre chart for 2013 and translate that into where those counties were. And you know, it's probably not a surprise to anyone that a lot of those counties are in northern Iowa, where we saw a lot of those rains and a lot of delayed planting, and then up in North Dakota, because I believe that's what a lot of people were talking about last year. But Stephen, if you want to go to the next slide, and I can't take complete credit for this slide because I did get this off an idea I saw someone else post, but you know, the idea that where did this prevented acres come from, the prevented planting acres come from, and the heavy rains that occurred last year during May, and how that delayed planting. There were also some delays in June, but because we don't have 2014 June precipitation yet, I didn't really put that on the slide. But if we go down to that image in the lower left, where we have this year's precipitation, certainly not to the extent that we saw last year's precipitation yet, but we have gotten a lot of precipitation actually in a lot of those same areas, although we've seen more in Wisconsin and Michigan and southern Illinois, and Randy can address and talk a little bit about you know, what he's seen in southern Illinois and some of the heavy rains we've gotten there. And then if we look at the precipitation forecast, really being forecast to be above average in these same locations over the second half of May, this is something that we're going to be watching and reporting on as the year goes forward to see if we can be a little more proactive in predicting acres that have gone out of production in different locations. So on to the next slide, please. There's something similar here, on-farm storage, and the census data just came out earlier this month, and we're combing through that to determine how it can benefit our clients, and we certainly welcome any suggestions anyone would have, anything that they would like to see plotted like this at the county level, or any comparisons. I actually found this slide interesting because it is looking at on-farm storage based on the census data, which is something that clients have identified as not being completely clear and obviously important. The more grain that can stay on the farm, you know, the more patient the farmers can be. And I found it interesting that those areas in northern Iowa have more than 100%. Now, keeping in mind that this is total on-farm storage, so this would include the ability to hold soybeans or wheat, so I think that's why we see the Dakotas with these high numbers. But the fact that, you know, these areas in Illinois where maybe people are used to moving their corn more quickly than these areas in Iowa show a lower percentage of on-farm storage, I think is interesting, and hopefully it's useful to the clients. Maybe go on to the next slide. Now here's a couple of sample maps from our webpage. This would be available to anyone who registers for the service for a trial period, and then for clients throughout the year. This is just where we've mapped out precipitation. We look at precipitation from, and this data is at 5-kilometer resolution, downloaded from a NOAA site. It combines the radar data with weather station data and calibrates each with the other. We're monitoring precipitation from the beginning of the water year, from October 1st of last year. We're also monitoring it for the rate of change compared to average. We're looking at the last 30 days compared to average and the last 7 days compared to average. Then you can also put the basis pricing on top of that to get a sense for, are these precipitation numbers making anyone nervous in the area? Are they impacting the price at the elevators? So hopefully this is a tool that people will find useful. We also have in the upper left of that slide, that little icon, we have the ability to chart these values to previous years, the last 10 years, using the same database we use for yield. So you could actually go in, look into your area, see what your precipitation totals were, be able to compare those to the last 10 years, and the chart charts out yield and precipitation. So you can look for analogous years to give you an understanding of how this year, everybody always talks about this year reminds me of 2004. Well, this way you could actually go and see, is this year like 2004? We also have the ability to plot growing degree days, soil moisture, and then the vegetation vigor from satellite. Stefan, maybe the next slide. Here's where I mentioned earlier, soil moisture. I think we've had some rains lately, and obviously these rains are important to the crop that's in the ground and the crop that's going to be in the ground, perhaps more so than the rains that fell in October or November of last year. But looking at the soil moisture specifically, we do see a deficit, especially running from Missouri up through Illinois and the southern parts of Iowa. Obviously, these areas that we showed, we've had a lot of rain in Wisconsin, and the eastern half of Minnesota aren't of concern. But we're beginning the year with a deficit in moisture in the soil. So maybe the next slide. Soil temperature also, I think we've covered this, and the fact that in the northwestern Corn Belt, in the Dakotas and Minnesota, upper Iowa, northern Iowa, we've got some really cold soils that are not going to promote emergence. And this is from about a week ago. So we'll be putting up a new chart for the report that we put out to the clients this week. But I don't think there's been a considerable change. I know that they've had some nice dry days recently in Iowa that may be helping with some of the planting, but soil temperatures are still low in that area. So maybe next slide. This map doesn't say much right now, but as the year goes on, we hope it provides some information. It's just a look at, we've just basically tied degree days to corn growth stage, made a general assumption that May 1st was the date you planted your corn. As growing degree days become more active and pile up, this chart should be more accurate and reflect what's actually going on. But hopefully, again, it'll be a useful piece of information as people just want to get a quick idea of where whether they should be tasseling soon, etc. And then the next chart is just looking at, again, at the growing degree days. It kind of repeats what we said earlier about this difference between the northwestern Corn Belt and the southeastern Corn Belt. We've actually got an increase in growing degree days with some of these warm days we've had recently in the southeastern Corn Belt, while the northwestern is at a deficit. So maybe next slide. So we have meteorologists at Genscape. Their primary focus is the power industry, natural gas, and being able to predict weather forecasts. So they're very accurate in long-term forecasts, because we want, in those areas, we want to be able to tell our client what's happening what's going to be happening this summer to understand power requirements, natural gas requirements. And just looking at, we'll be putting out these forecasts again in our reports. We'll be putting out these forecasts on our webpage. And what we're showing for the summer as of now is that temperatures will be below normal in these areas where we saw a similar forecast last year. We saw similar occurrence last year. And we're looking at some good precipitation numbers in the Corn Belt as well. So that's some promising information, and let's hope that that forecast maintains, certainly for the precipitation side of things. So, Stefan, I'll let you take over at this point, see if there are any questions, et cetera.
So looking to the question, I want to thank everybody, first of all the speakers, all the presenters, everybody that contributed putting this presentation together. Looking at the question, we have one question here, and that is a valid question. It says, how does good and very low translate into a number and percentages? That goes back to the chart where we show emergence and crop progress. And the short answer is that we will improve that. We have currently 13 people giving us individual opinions, and yes, we will have to integrate the qualitative ratings with more quantitative numbers. But for now, they are what they are. In the incoming and future reports, we will certainly be a little bit more consistent on these ratings. I guess these are all the questions we had. Does anybody else want to make any other comments at this point? All right. Again, want to thank everybody for putting this webinar together. All listeners, please go to our website at landviewer.genscape.com. Check it out. If you have any questions, contact me at 312-316-3498 or drop me an email. You got my email address right here. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.